Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. This is my first YouTube video. As some of you may know, my husband and I have been working on making our very first video game for several years now, and I've been doing a lot of artwork, so I thought it would be really fun to share my journey on YouTube and record some of my process videos of me making my artwork. The first video is going to be me painting a fairy. This one is going to be for a character called the Shaman, and some of the video skips out, but as you will see, you can see most of the details and the process for painting the character. Anyway, if you want to keep up with our progress, you can go to our website, which I'm going to be linking below, and subscribe with your email, and we'll be sending out notifications for any progress reports. Thank you. Okay, so getting right into it, I already have the concept figured out and a rough sketch put in. I do change some of the details in her headdress later because this is a little bit different than what we're going for. We ended up going with something more elegant. So I'm just blocking in some of the colors to try and figure out a color scheme. My goal with this one was to have a really good, vibrant color scheme that pops, and we kind of skip ahead here with removing some of the background recording. Okay, so I've blocked in some of the values already. I'm not super concerned with the specific tones yet because I can go back and edit the color later. But I do want to put the highlights in and the shadows and midtones. The way I like to paint, and I find I work best, is if I block in the values first and then I go back in and blend it in with a smudge brush. I'm using a blender brush on Procreate, and the one I got is from Art with Flow. She's an artist on YouTube, and she has a brush pack with a standard blender brush, and that's her standard blender brush I'm using. It's probably my favorite blender brush for skin and most smooth textures. I like to do most of my painting and blocking in with the Dave Greco brush. It's his DJ Main brush. He's another artist on YouTube, and he has a really good brush set. It's probably one of my favorite brush sets. So when I blend the hair, I actually like to use that same DJ Main brush. It's a square brush, but I really like how it blends hair. It kind of still leaves a little streaky texture. So here I'm just figuring out details on the face. This is usually my favorite part to render, so I kind of take my time here, mostly because it's fun. Putting in some purple colors in the highlights. Trying to get the shading on the nose just right. And since I'm going for a really pretty face, I make sure her skin is nice and smooth. Sometimes I like to leave more painterly strokes, but for this one I'm just decided to go for a smoother texture. Noses are really fun to paint. I don't know, I really like noses and I really like lips. I think because I struggled with them for a long time, so now that I kind of like how they turn out better, I enjoy the process. Here I'm adding some glow from the magic that she's going to be holding in her hand. That's not how the magic shape's going to turn out, but I kind of put something there as a placeholder. Playing around with color values, putting in some highlights. I use the screen mode here to add a lighter layer, and then I kind of erase the areas that I want to still be dark, so around the eyelashes, shadows, darker parts of the face. I used the add mode to add in those highlights in the inner corner of the eyes, top of the nose. and I used a cool tone value. It was like a bluish purple. I tend to like the cooler tones for those pops of highlights on the skin. So a little part skipped over, but I changed the value. The hue is a little bit more purple now on the skin. This is something I kind of play around with throughout the painting, but I like how the purple looks with that kind of more cyan highlight on the skin. Now just cleaning up the hands. Hands, I always recommend taking reference photos. Sometimes I just wing it, and it can look okay for some poses, but for something like this, I like to take pictures. Lots of hand selfies in my phone. So I know I wanted to put foliage on her dress. She's supposed to be a smaller character, so about a foot long, maybe a little bit smaller. So I'm trying to imagine what foliage would look like down at that size, so I kind of play around with bigger shapes, small little flowers, because I've seen flowers that are that small. And I end up kind of going with these petals. Again, I had some reference for the drapery here in the clothes. It just helps to make things look more believable. Yeah, I play around with the shoulder placement for a while. I looked at myself and took some selfies to try and get this right, but for some reason I was still playing around with it, trying to see what looked right. And now for the wings. Wings are fun because you can do all kinds of shapes with them. I make this one a little bit translucent, lowering the opacity on the color layer. I ended up changing the colors on the flower petals to try and make this a little bit more unified of a color scheme. Then I add in her staff. Cleaning up details on the staff. This part's kind of satisfying to do too. Textures. I think I like textures to paint best. So now I'm just refining some of the edges. I like to see where I can add some crisp edges. So I do crisp on one side and kind of blend in the other side so that it's soft. I notice when I look at paintings that I really like from other professionals that they have this going on a lot, so it's something I'm trying to incorporate more. And now I'm trying to come up with a cool shape for the magic. This shape ends up looking too much like water to me, and she's more of a nature magic type, so yeah, playing around with leaf shapes, some spots, light effects, and then at some point I end up swapping this out, swirling things around. Yeah, we kind of end up going more with this kind of fiery shape. but it's green, so it's nature. And back to rendering out the face a little bit. I noticed some of the edges were not popping quite enough, so sharpening up and deepening those shadows. And now I add the lighting on the skin closest to the magic. It's kind of a greenish blue hue. And the end of this kind of skips out of the background, so this is the finished result. Thank you for watching.